Welcome and thank you for attending. I am Jonna Adams, and today we will explore the timeless story given to us through the myth of Pygmalion and its many expressions in various recent and current forms of media. According to Ovid, Pygmalion was the king of the island of Cyprus, and he did not, by any stretch of the imagination, like women. He thought that they were all wanton, immoral, and dirty. He had seen them spending their lives in wickedness, and offended by the failings that nature gave the female heart, he lived as a bachelor, without a wife or partner for his bed. So clearly, he was not interested in getting married. So rather than, to use today's terms, dating girls and finding a wife, he spent his time sculpting the perfect female shape out of ivory. In no time at all, he loved his sculpture. Not in the way that a creator loves their works of art, but in an explicitly sexual way, because of the ivory female figure's exquisiteness. We can see part of the poetic translation from Ovid's Metamorphoses, depicted in this picture. He knows 'tis madness, yet he must adore, and still the more he knows it, loves the more. The flesh, or what so seems, he touches oft, which feels so smooth that he believes it soft. He was so enamored with the statue of his own making that he began to treat it as if it were a real woman, buying her adornments of clothing, kissing and groping, even lying with it in his bed, being sure to provide sufficient pillows for the head. Even calling her, or it, wife, or bedfellow, after a very real wedding, binding him to the mannequin. Although he would provide the statue with many fine jewels and accessories, to include clothing. If the form was naked, all the better. And so it was that he lived with this ardent love for the inanimate feminine figure. The day of the Venus festival came about, and Pygmalion made an animal offering with an earnest prayer to Venus, the goddess of love. If you can grant all things, you gods. I wish as a bride to have, and not daring to say the ivory girl, he said, one like my ivory girl. Venus knew what he meant, and out of fondness for him, granted his wish, and gave him a sign that all would be as he asked. Upon returning home, Pygmalion again bestowed his frequent physical intimate kisses on the statue, touching her breasts and feeling the ivory statue as he had done so often before, but this time was different. I read a section from the translated myth compiled by Michael J. Cummings. Full of expectation, he lies down next to the statue. When he kisses it, its lips seem to redden. He also notices that its body appears to give like flesh when he touches it. When he checks the pulse, he feels a throbbing. Convinced now that the statue has become human, he gives thanks to Venus, then lips to lips he joined. Now freed from fear, he found the saviour of kiss sincere. At this wakened image opened her eyes, and viewed at once light and lover with surprise. It is important to note that this is where the myth ends, and nothing further is mentioned of the relationship between Pygmalion and the woman, who is not even named in Ovid's account, but barely mentioned in Apollonius's works by the name of Galatea. We can now deconstruct this myth by looking at its contemporary twins, comparing them and analyzing them. Pygmalion is the poster child for males who yearn for the perfect woman, and spurn those who are actually living and breathing around them, always finding a flaw to some degree with them. Not just any woman, but the physically perfect woman, one who, we would assume, has the perfect personality to match the body, which is also created by the man, as we can see in this drawing. In contemporary art, we see that it is males who thrust their will on an imaginary female who comes to life. This is in keeping with the pattern set by Pygmalion, and interesting enough, it does not consider what the newly living female wishes or desires, but emphasizes merely her sexuality and physical aesthetics, or merely celebrating the power of the efforts of the male in making such a thing. There are many films that have been inspired by Pygmalion's triumph. Here is an animated film, Igor, in which a hunchback monster in a city of evil doctors creates his own female Frankenstein and promptly falls in love with her. The twist is, he falls in love with her after she's alive. Ruby Sparks, a very recent movie about a writer whose perfect female character comes to life, jumping out of the pages of the book he's writing and into his life. In this movie, the author can change the girl at will, writing in his book a new characteristic that he likes, or removing anything that he doesn't like. In a way, Ruby Sparks one-ups Pygmalion because his feminine creation is physically and mentally alterable. And of course, the classic My Fair Lady, which thankfully has a less erotic twist, but perhaps more of a psychological and emotional one for Eliza, who plays the part of Galatea, living from the start, remodeled to suit Henry Higgins, who is, of course, Pygmalion. In My Fair Lady, misogynist Higgins takes and trains Eliza, a common flower girl, to look, act, speak, and think like a lady of high society. He succeeds in doing so, and somehow or other, in the middle of it, he fell in love with her. Not the flower girl, mind you, but the girl that she's become. his creation. The whole film ends with Eliza threatening to leave, but unable to do so, and Higgins snidely remarking, "Eliza, where are my slippers?" This gives us an idea of how the end might go. Unlike the abrupt end to the Pygmalion myth, Eliza is forever doomed, as we can safely assume Galatea was, to a life of subjectivity. So we can see that the Pygmalion myth serves to perpetuate societal opinions of and uses for women, none of which are very appealing to the modern woman, nor accurate, one could argue. But still, is there something in that myth which reaches across time that relays an eternal truth, at least for one gender? Welcome to the world of Japanese manga. Japan is currently undergoing a crisis, a ridiculously low birth rate. What is to blame? Pygmalion. Hundreds of thousands of Japanese men are dearly devoted to their favorite manga characters, literally loving their hug pillows, and even marrying the fictional characters. Pygmalion is certainly the first of many men to fall in love with an inanimate object, or even now, a virtual persona. This male preference for a fantasy female is causing serious population problems in Japan, a country booming with Pygmalions. There are now virtual games in which the point is to date virtual girls, the most popular of which is Love Plus, a Nintendo 3DS game in which you date 3 virtual manga women or men simultaneously, and ultimately pick one to be your girlfriend or boyfriend. You can speak to, kiss, and touch the character in game. For some, it becomes much more than a game, and it becomes an unreal reality, full of ardent passion in their hearts and even in their minds. In a psychological study published in the Computers and Human Behavior Journal, researchers found that intimate virtual relationships have many similarities, those qualities of realism and seriousness that goes beyond a game or idle fantasy to include frequent, if not constant, communication. Pygmalion is not only a societal view of gender roles and purposes, of women as objects, it is a mix of Freud's sexual perspective and a part of C.G. Jung's male collective conscience, shared by those who prefer the perfect yet unreal woman or schoolgirl versus the tangible, attainable, and utterly human woman. In the end, though, we see this Pygmalion trope everywhere in the world, and it is costing women today, as it did then, so much.